Okay, I think it's time to begin, everyone. Thank you and welcome to our To School or Not to School workshop information session this afternoon. My name is Janet Southgate and I am the cohort workshop facilitator here at the WorkLink Employment Society. Just a little bit of background about what we do. We are a not-for-profit that provides employment services for the greater West Shore area from Langford, Colwood, Souk, all the way out to Port Renfrew. We work under the WorkBC umbrella as a contractor for employment services, similar to many other offices throughout British Columbia. So we would like to first acknowledge the traditional territories of the Esquimalt, Songhees, Souk, Sianu, and Pashidat First Nations, on which our offices are located. We are proud to provide employment-related services to these nations. So as I said, we work under the WorkBC umbrella, providing employment services to our clients. And over the past several months, and probably the past year and a half, we've come to realize, as we have been talking to clients, that with the COVID pandemic, people are pivoting from one type of work to another for a number of reasons, which we may be talking about later on. With pivoting, a lot of clients have been reassessing their skills and their qualifications and looking to fill in gaps for them to become qualified in other areas of work. So that led to us discussing how can we let people know what options are available out there through WorkLink, through other places like financial aid, YouTube, Coursera, all these other different avenues for people to upskill and to improve the resume to make them more employable. So we have 4 speakers this afternoon. Our first speaker is going to be Tony Abbas. He is our labor market specialist here at WorkLink Employment Society. So he's going to talk a little bit about what the labor market says with regard to education and about the cost benefit analysis of having a post-secondary education. Our next speaker following that will be Tracy Jokes. She's our program support specialist here at WorkLink Employment Society. She's also a workshop facilitator as my counterpart. And she's going to be talking a little bit about the short-term occupational certificates that we have to offer through WorkBC. Our next speaker is going to be Catherine Alexander. And Catherine is our guest from Camosun College, and she's the financial aid advisor there. And she's going to be speaking about financial aid and student loans. And then our last speaker this afternoon is Jane Wakefield, who is an employment advisor at WorkLink Employment Society in the Souk office, but she's also a parent, a mother, and she's going to be talking about her practical experience with regard to the benefits of obtaining post-secondary education and the cost-benefit analysis of investing in post-secondary education. So that's a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing this afternoon. A little bit of housekeeping for you all. When you're on a virtual meeting, it's great to see your faces, but it's also nice if you're muted so that we can prevent any background noise from filtering in and distracting from the presentation. As well, if you need to take a break, feel free to turn your video and your sound off and do what you need to do and join the meeting when you're ready. We have the option for you to chat, but we're also going to have a question and answer session after each speaker. So if you have questions, write them down. If you forget a question that you might want to ask a presenter and we've moved on, just save them and we'll have a bit of time for questions at the end. Okay, everyone. So thank you very much for your perseverance in getting connected. I see some chat here that the Zoom links had changed, and I apologize for that. We had a little bit of miscommunication there, but I'm glad that you were able to figure it out and join us nonetheless. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Tony Abbas, our labor market specialist here at WorkBC.
Yeah, hi everybody. So I'm going to just talk briefly about some trends in education, what's happened in the labor market where the need for post-secondary education has become more important as we've moved along through the decades. And I'll look at some trends related to the pandemic. We'll also look at earnings differences for people who their highest level of education is high school, and for those people who go beyond, and what the difference is over a career in lifetime earnings. And then we'll also look at the stability. What is the unemployment rates for people with post-secondary certificates, because that's important as well. And then we'll also look, as Janet mentioned, at a cost-benefit analysis, a quick way or not necessarily quick, but a way to do an analysis of whether post-secondary education makes sense for you, especially if you have to borrow money or the period of your education be long. So in terms of, we don't need a big history lesson, but it used to be with work that we could talk our way into a job and we could be trained on the job. Often it was an informal apprenticeship where we would gain skills, move along in a career, perhaps train other people like we were trained, and everybody lived happily ever after. And that system worked for decades, or sorry, centuries. It worked. And then as work became a little more complicated, employers started to see the value of some high school education. So employers started to expect that. And then eventually employers expected us as job seekers, entry-level job seekers, to have our grade 12. And now we're at the point where the provincial government is forecasting that we're going to have 1 million jobs over the next decade or so, and that 80% of those 1 million jobs will require some sort of post-secondary education. So it's a very important trend to be aware of, and it's only going to intensify. And I don't want to hit you with too many statistics, but I think it's really startling if you sort of look at it. About 30 years ago, half or a quarter of the workforce that was aged 25 years or older in BC had a high school education as their highest level of education, and 20% had not completed high school. So in 1990, about half the workers in the province had their highest education as high school or lower. And if we just zoom ahead to 2021, only 15% of our workforce has grade 12 as their highest level of education, and 5% with no grade 12 certificate. So in 30 years, we've gone from almost half the workforce having grade 12 as their highest form of education to about 20%. So it's been a big change, and there's no going back on that. The world of work has gotten more complicated, and employers' expectations have gotten higher. So there's just no turning back the clock on that one. And so I would like to just share my screen. Is that working for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, people can see that chart.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I just want to talk about this 1 million jobs that the province is speculating that we will have over the next 10 years. And I think it's a pretty good guess, just because the number of people in BC who are ready to retire and our low provincial birth rate. So, I mentioned earlier, 80% of the jobs, of those new jobs, will require post-secondary education, but it doesn't have to mean that you need to go to university unless you want to or need to for your chosen career, right? So essentially, there's other ways to access those jobs other than going to university. There's a private school, there's a public college like Camosun College, there's formal apprenticeships. So basically, there's other pathways other than having to spend 4 years in university getting your degree, unless I mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, unless you want to. And then, so the next trend I want to talk about is what's happened during the pandemic. So essentially, what employers found is that there was many employers in the hospitality sector and the service sector who found that after a pandemic wave would end, that their workers were not coming back. So what's happened in Canada over these last 2 years is that there's been a huge shift towards people returning to school or entering into school to get some sort of credential so that they could change careers. So in fact, in 2020, 60% of adults between the age of 25 and 64 entered into post-secondary training. And that is the highest of any country in the OECD, which is an economic grouping, right? So Canada is leading the way when it comes to post-secondary education. And then, the question becomes why are people changing careers? And, as Janet mentioned, people are pivoting. And why are people pivoting? And it's for a variety of reasons. And you probably, maybe experienced some of this yourself. A lot of people realized they did not perhaps feel safe in their job during a pandemic, or they took the opportunity to reassess their life goals, or they wanted to, earn more money. So that is the next things I want to talk about is what is the difference in earnings? I'm going to share my screen again. What is the difference in earnings over our career as opposed to if we just leave the workforce after high school and make our way? So in Canada, it depends, how much money you earn in a career depends on at least three factors. And one of them is, how long you stayed in school, what specific certificate you got. And then, of course, unfortunately, it's gender. And it might be a bit startling to look at, but I think we need to see it. Right. And there is definitely a wage gap between the genders in Canada, and education doesn't erase that gap. It can minimize it, but it's not, if you look at the bars, it's not an equal footing. Right. So if we look at, let's say, a male with a post-secondary certificate or diploma, so compared to a high school diploma, they're going to earn about $400,000 more dollars over their career, if we want to call their career about 30 years, or about $14,000 a year. And for a woman with the same credential, she's going to earn about $320,000 more dollars, or about $11,000 a year, compared to another woman who left after high school to go into the workforce. So it is a quite big difference in earnings. And of course, for those who go to university and get a bachelor's degree or higher, it's an even bigger gap, right? So statistics prove that if you do enter into post-secondary education, over your career, you're going to earn a substantial amount more money in most cases. And it's also going to affect, obviously, retirement, how much money you would have in retirement, and how soon you can retire, right? So there's also that, those factors to think of as well. Okay, so that's earnings. And then, but it's not the only reason, education is not the only reason that people can have higher earnings over the lifetime. A lot of that has to do with job stability. So for example, people who, I don't know why I stopped sharing my screen there when I just had to share it again. Sorry about that. So people who stay in school longer tend to have more stability in their employment. They have fewer periods of unemployment and shorter periods of unemployment. So if you want to, if everybody can see this chart, if we look back at November 2018, the unemployment rates for somebody with a high school diploma as opposed to a post-secondary certificate diploma were very similar. But of course, the earnings are higher for the post-secondary certificate, right? So we have to keep that in mind. And then if you look at a year later, there's suddenly a jump in the unemployment rate for people who have a high school diploma. And this is what you'll see, depending on the economy, how good the economy is, and other factors. People with high school diplomas or less can see wilder fluctuations in their employment rates. And then if you want to look at November of 2020, essentially that was when the pandemic had blown up in one of its early phases, right? And so we had higher unemployment rates across the board. Oddly enough, people with post-secondary certificates or diplomas were a little higher during that period. But if you flip ahead to November of last year, what you're looking at there is what's going to be reflected as we move forward. So, and this is for BC. So people with high school diploma as the highest level of education, the unemployment rate is going to be a little higher, as opposed to somebody with a post-certificate or a university degree, right? So it's not just the higher pay that makes a difference in lifetime earning, it's the stability within labor market. How many periods of unemployment do I have in my career? And that makes a big difference too. And then a couple of things I want to mention. Statistics Canada reported that, the highest job growth during the pandemic was for people with a university degree. And so that's worth keeping in mind as well. People these days often want a pandemic-proof career. And it tends to go along with the higher levels of education. And then also people are very interested in remote jobs. And though people with remote jobs tend to have higher levels of education as well. So apart from the earning stability, there's also a couple things to keep in mind, in terms of moving forward. And then I'm going to stop this. Okay, and then the last thing we want to talk about is essentially, what is the cost to going in school? Because we all know that there is a benefit to going to school. We just looked at the lifetime earnings and the periods of unemployment, and it's pretty tangible. It's pretty easy to see, but going to school, of course, is not free for most people. Some people do have it funded, but it's not free for everybody. So I just want to mention a couple of things that may help you. Can people see this document?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Sorry about that. Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. So this is a cost-benefit analysis that Janet found, and it's a very good one. It looks at it provides a way for somebody to sit down and go, what is it going to cost me to be out of the labor market? So if you look at the total cost of training, you have to look at the first two boxes there, which is the cost of the student loans and the tuition, the cost of interest on the student loan, of course, which can add up over your career, but also what is it costing you to be out of the labor market? So what are you missing in terms of lost wages and other opportunities that could have popped up while you were working instead of in school? So for most people, they could benefit from filling in this kind of chart that looks at enters their previous, or on the left, you could enter your current earnings. And if you want to add, you could add 1 or 2% if you're hoping to get a raise every year. And then on the right, you could add, you could do some research and find out what does somebody in my chosen occupation make on a yearly basis, and do a comparative analysis. And at the bottom, you add up the left if I'd stayed in school, and on the right, do this calculation. Here's my higher salary on the right, but I have to keep in mind that I have these costs of education, right? So essentially, does the bump in earnings that you could potentially make up for taking yourself out of the labor market for a year or 2 years or 4 years? And in most cases it will, but you still need to do the analysis to make sure that it's going to make sense financially for you. And then there's also the potential cost of a wrong educational choice. I've worked with many clients over the years who regretted, the program they chose to study, and that's possibly because they didn't know enough about the occupation before they entered into training. And this is where this sort of career planning can help. Some job shadowing, some research into what is the day-to-day job like on the other end. Are there things that would make it difficult for me to stay in the career in terms of my health or mental health? And these are big questions that need to be answered before, there's a large commitment of taking out a loan or making a big life decision. And sometimes people, change their minds, and that's fine, but there is a cost of that as well, right? And then also, I've worked with people who, after they graduated, they moved to a new province or country where their credential was not recognized. So it's such a big decision in terms of the impact on our lifetime earnings. And because we may have to take out a loan, anybody who's thinking about going to school should really do this kind of analysis, sit with somebody who can give them some financial analysis, and also somebody who can do some career planning advice to make sure that the choice is the best one for them. And so I'm going to stop sharing. And so that's basically, the points I wanted to get to today.
So Tony, thanks so much for that information. It's great as always. So Tony does a lot of research to provide us with information. And one of the places that Tony goes to research is the WorkBC website. And if you are a job seeker or thinking about changing a career, to supplement what Tony has said, go to workbc.ca. And I find that the WorkBC website is kept very up to date with regard to labor market information. And if you're thinking about a career, that would be the first place I would go, because it gives you labor market outlook for the type of work that you are thinking about doing. So before you spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to re-educate yourself to a career you're interested in, make sure there's going to be a job there when you finish your schooling. So that's another thing that I want to add to supplement what you said, Tony. Does anyone have any questions for Tony? I just wanted to say I neglected to mention this at the beginning, that we are recording this session. And so if you do not wish to speak or have your face seen, then you can certainly mute and turn your video off, but it will be available to you on YouTube, and we will send you the link for that, and you will be able to get all this information again if you have missed pieces or want to share it with someone. So thanks very much, Tony. Very, very good. All right, our next speaker is going to be Tracy Julks. Tracy is our program support specialist. She's also a workshop facilitator. And when you are a workshop facilitator at WorkLink Employment Society, you do need to keep yourself up to date, keep your research current, so we impart the best information for our clients. So Tracy is going to talk a little bit about short-term occupation certificates and certifications. So welcome, Tracy.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can see my screen that I've shared for short-term.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about short-term orientation and certification. And we refer to those at WorkBC as stocks. And so it's a certain type of training, and to meet the criteria, the stock must meet these 3 criteria in order to be eligible. They can't be any more than 34 hours in duration. They must be delivered. Oh, sorry, hang on, I'm jumping ahead here. Sorry, I apologize. I've got too many screens going. Okay, so sorry. So what is a short-term or a stock short-term orientation and certification? So it's a type of training, and it's a type of certification for basic workplace safety orientation to meet regulatory requirements for an industry. Or it could be a certification to meet industry standards for entry-level employment. It could also be certifications to meet employment conditions for a confirmed job offer that you may have as well. And we consider that at WorkBC, we call that a job start. And what a job start is when a client has a confirmed job offer and needs to buy work clothing or essential work tools or supplies in order to begin work. And if eligible, WorkLink will cover these costs for clients who potentially may not have the money to buy them to get started at work. And so that's what we consider a job start and how we can help as well. So getting back to the second slide, in order to qualify, a stock must meet these criteria, being no more than 35 hours in length, be delivered within 4 consecutive weeks, and also lead to a certificate of completion. So this is very important, that there is a certificate at the end of the training. Eligibility for stock training is open to all case managed clients at WorkBC, as well as self-serve clients if it actually qualifies as a job start. And as I mentioned, a job start is if there is an offer, a confirmed offer of employment on the table for a client. Okay. So let's take a look. We've mentioned some of the training. Let's take a look at actually some of the training that can be covered under stock. So it could be emergency first aid, standard first aid with CPR and AED training, occupational first aid, mental health first aid, food safe, serving it right, forklift operator, traffic control person, WMIS, fall protection, confined space, or responsible adult course. Now, these are some of the common ones that we see frequently for clients, but there are many, many more types of training that actually qualify for stocks. Ones like ground disturbance and H2S Alive, motion picture orientation, bear and cougar aware training as well. So we know that there are many types of training that people need to carry out their jobs in many different industries. And these are just a sample of some of the stocks that we can offer. And so when we look at eligibility, again, for stocks, it's open to all case managed clients. And as long as the client has a financial need, we can cover that cost. And if it's a self-serve client, it does qualify for a job start as well if there's a confirmed offer of employment. Okay. So that is sort of a general overview on stocks and some of the training that can be offered if you need that to get sort of a jump start in your job search, or if you have a confirmed offer of employment. Do we want to take questions on any of the stock training before we move on? If there's any questions on that, happy to jump into those.
Tracy, maybe you can give our participants the website if they want to become a WorkBC client so that they are eligible to access some of this training.
You bet. So I've actually got that. I've got that. If I just zoom ahead here, I've got it at the very end of the
Okay,
slide.
perfect.
Yeah, so it is, if people want to go on to actually look at applying for our services through WorkBC, you go to apply@workbc.ca, and that's the website if you would like to go on and check that out. The other thing is, if you have questions, please contact either our West Shore or Langford office, or our Souk office as well, because we've got great staff that are more than happy to have a conversation with you if you would just like a little bit more information about registering for services. Sometimes people are a little, they're not quite sure what obligation is required for registration for services, and it's quite straightforward, and it's an awesome opportunity to get that support for your job search. Okay, so if we don't have any questions on the stocks, next section I'll jump into is wage subsidy, Janet, if you're ready for me to start on that one.
Of course, yes, thank you.
Yeah. So some of the others, so stock is one area of training that is available at WorkBC, and another fantastic program that we offer is a wage subsidy program as well. And the WorkBC wage subsidy program covers a part of employee wages so that employers can hire job seekers and provide work opportunities along with on-the-job training. So the program assists employers when hiring someone who lacks or may lack the necessary skills for a position by paying a percentage of the new hire's wages for a period of up to 24 weeks. So it's a great program, and both unemployed individuals and employers in BC can benefit from the wage subsidy program. So it does benefit the new hire by providing that paid on-the-job training opportunities to gain skills, and also which will lead to long-term employment. It allows job seekers to gain a job where they may lack all the required skills if they were applying to the job simply with their resume as it stands. But the employer will agree then to hire that person to provide that on-the-job training. So it really is a great opportunity for both employers and employees to acquire that sustainable long-term employment. So job seekers, as a job seeker, if you're interested in exploring this wage subsidy program, you can apply again for the employment services and explore if this wage subsidy is going to be a good fit for you for your job search. Job seekers, you don't apply directly for the wage subsidy program unless you happen to be connected to an employer who wants to hire you under this program. And then the employer applies first, and then you receive a notice to apply online as well if you happen to have connected to an employer who would like to hire you during this this program. If you are interested in this program and you're not currently a client, sign up for services, and then you can have this discussion with your employment advisor if it's a really good fit for you for your job search. And if so, once you've decided it is something that's going to be really valuable, then what you can do is self-market yourself to potential employers as a wage subsidy candidate, and then you can suggest that they apply online as well. And so that's the overview. If you're interested at all about applying for the employment services through WorkBC, check out the website, and you can also apply at workbc.ca. So that's what I've got for information for you on wage subsidy. Any questions that anybody would like to ask regarding the stock training or the wage subsidy programs?
Tracy, there is a question in chat.
Yep. I'll just pop that.
The question is this limited to BC employers only?
Yes, it is. Because it's a provincial program, it is limited to BC employers as well as people living in BC as well.
Thank you. Any more questions for Tracy? I hear someone.
Sorry, hi, my laptop had crashed on me. I don't know if this question was already asked, but going back to the short certificates with the first aid and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So if you're already connected with WorkBC, which I am, is it that it's pending on if you have a job offer, or if you're looking to get like food certificate and also like mental health, something like those things? Do you have to have a job already in place or a hire, or you can have those as you looking for work?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question, Kim. Thanks for asking. So it is open to all clients. Again, it depends on financial need, but you don't have to have a confirmed job offer in order for that certification. It can be part of your job searching plan with your employment advisor, that if you are looking for work and you, for example, if you're looking, for training in the healthcare or education areas, we know for sure that first aid is required. It's an entry-level requirement for all of those jobs going in. So that is something that would be fantastic for you to have as part of your job search. And then as an applicant coming in to have that training, you may be a few steps ahead of other applicants coming in. And that's the whole idea behind this training that we can provide, is that we are trying to remove barriers for people to help them be successful in their job search and as job seekers. And so to have that training coming in, it's a huge boon for employers when they're looking at your resume to say, oh, wow, Kim already has this first aid training. She can hit the ground running. So yes, you can do it if you're job searching. And if you're connected to, to an employment advisor, then yes, we can definitely do that. We do also offer them as part of job starts as well. So if a client if a person comes in and says, look, I've got a confirmed offer, they may not currently be a WorkBC client, but they say, look, I've got a job offer, but I need work boots and I need some safety equipment in order to, the employer says, I need this to get started. We can work with that as well, because again, we're trying to remove barriers to get people into sustainable long-term employment.
Great question and response. Thank you. Any more questions for Tracy? Great, thank you, everyone. So we're going to move on. I'd like to introduce Catherine Alexander. Catherine, thank you for navigating the Zoom meeting and connection this afternoon. Catherine comes to us from Camosun College, and she is in the financial aid student loan area, and she's going to speak to us for a little bit about financial aid and student loans. So Catherine, you can take it away.
Great, I'm just gonna pull up my little slideshow here. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yes, we can.
Okay, are we on actual slideshow? Hopefully you can have the same view I do.
We can't see, we see all the slides. If you click on slideshow from beginning, then we can just see one slide at a time.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah,
I clicked. Apparently I need to do things twice these days. I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today live from the Lekwungen and Wasanich territory lands, and I'm thrilled to be living, working, and playing here. It's a wonderful place to be. And thank you everyone for having me today. I think a lot of people have questions and nervousness around anything financial. And so I don't think we always get the questions that we should get from students. I think they try to avoid us a bit like the plague. So hopefully this will provide some information both for those potential students, but as well for people like Janet and Tracy and Tony who maybe don't have all of our information and they can share it with some of their people too. This is whenever we do our presentations, sometimes I don't even have a picture of myself. And you can't see me. So here's myself. And of course, you know, much rather look at our fuzzy ones. So this is my pup Roo, who was sleeping on the floor here beside me a moment ago. And I've been working with financial aid here with Camosun for the last 4 years. So here's some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about today, and we'll kind of glaze over. We won't go too much into depth, but these are some of the things that we tend to get a lot of questions about. So I'm going to try and answer at least most of this. The questions we tend to get the most are student loan related. And for students who require some sort of funding, this is where they're going to turn to for the bulk of reliable funds. And again, scary, scary. Everyone's heard the stories about someone taking out loans and then taking their entire lifetime to repay them and having interest that accrues. And so I want to put people's minds at ease a little bit. There are lots of pieces to it, and always feel free to reach out to us. So those of us in financial aid, we're available in person, by phone, by email. So always ask the questions because we find so many students come to us in their last term and they don't realize that they missed out on entrance awards and bursaries. They don't realize that there were student loan grants that they could have applied for. There's all of these pieces that they could have had help for, and they don't realize it until the very end of their education. So always feel free to put your hand up and say, hey, I need something. I don't even know what I need, but here's what my problem is. And we will help guide you to whatever area that is going to be best for you. So student loans, this is from studentabc.ca. That's the site that you can see there on the right-hand side. I'm going to take away some of your nervousness. So when you're applying for loans, you're applying as a full-time student. You're going to apply for loan money, which you have to repay. And you're going to apply for grant money. It's all in one application. The grant money is the good stuff. You don't have to repay that, but you can't get it unless you apply for your loan. So I have certainly seen some students, and it all depends on your criteria, but I've seen some students who apply and get $3,000 in loan money and $4,000 in grant money. So that means you're repaying $3,000, but you got $4,000 for free. So I actually don't understand why more students don't apply. And I've certainly seen some students who get all grant. So it's really a wonderful opportunity. Now it does take 6 weeks, as it says there on the screen. So the sooner you can start, the better it will be that your funds will be here before the fee deadlines. Always connect with us about the fee deadlines so you know when they're due. So then you can sort of figure out what your funds are. You can absolutely apply for loan funding after your funds might not arrive in time, but you can still apply after your schooling has started. And I think that's another thing that students don't really realize. There on the screen, it gives you some of the, how to do it. You create a dashboard, you verify your ID, you'll get a notice of assessment. And that notice of assessment normally comes about 2 weeks after you apply. It will tell you how much loan money, how much grant money, and whether it is federal, so coming from Canada, or whether it's provincial coming just from the province, and what type of grant funding it is. At that point, you can look at that and go, well, this isn't worth my while. All they're offering me is loan money. I don't really need it, but I could have used a little bit of help. I'm going to cancel. You can absolutely do it without any penalty at all. So it's kind of a nice thing to be able to do, see what you're going to be offered, and then you can make the decision. For part-time funding, it works a little bit differently. And the nice part about that is there's a lot of students who they want to do nursing, let's say, but they don't have the prerequisites needed. Part-time funding allows you to get that, and full-time can as well. But the nice thing about the part-time is you can say, I don't want that loan funding. I just want the grant funding, and you can apply that way. So we have a lot of students who either are doing maybe upgrading, or they're doing maybe like the business program. And they've got courses in the fall, they've got courses in the winter, and they're full-time, but then they want to do 1 or 2 over the summer when they're only going to be a part-time student. They can do this process. So you can be a full-time student one term and a part-time student the other term and apply for the funding that's appropriate. And if you're ever unsure about whether you're full-time or part-time, reach out to us and we will help you with that. So the part-time is actually an application form currently. Student ABC is going to be changing this process, so it will eventually be online, but it is still a form. So you fill it out, you can email it or drop it off to us, and we will start the whole process. There will also be a notice of assessment to tell you how much you're eligible for. It also is a 6-week process. So the other thing that I want to talk to you about student loans is the repayment side of things. So I know Tony was talking a little bit about interest and getting over your head. And yes, there is interest, but at least thanks to COVID for now, and who knows what that will look like going forward. Right now, they're not charging interest. Yay. The BC portion of any funding that you get does not charge interest, and it stopped doing that before COVID. So going forward, you will not have any interest that accrues on whatever BC funding, loan funding that you get. You're only going to be paying interest on the federal portion. And we are hoping that they're going to drop that at some point in the future. We don't know that necessarily, but it kind of looks like they're moving in that direction. So that will help you. So when you're done your education, you know exactly what it is you owe. The repayment isn't a big scary thing. If you connect with Student ABC, with National Student Loans, they will help you through the whole process. And you don't need to start repayment until 6 months after you've completed your full-time funding. So now, is there a note in the chat there?
Yes, Catherine, I think it's directly related to this slide. Are you able to speak about student loans for students with disabilities?
Sure can. So the difference and this slide doesn't really address everything. So students who have a permanent disability, there is a process that you can fill in some forms, have your doctor fill in some forms, and that will be declared. That allows a number of things. And some students never touch any of it. That's fine. It will usually open you up to be reviewed for additional grant funding, and that's the good stuff. So if that's something that you identify as someone with a disability, absolutely apply. And I know a lot of people don't like to put their hand up and say, I have a disability, and they don't want anyone to know. I'm there with you, and I went through that all through school. But you're starting behind the 8 ball. This just allows you to be level with everyone else. So not only do you get the grant funding, which you don't have to repay, you can have help with tutoring funding, assistive technologies and equipment, computers. You can get extra time on exams. There's all kinds of things that can come from that permanent disability status that just, again, helps you level the playing field. And the disability grant funding is something that, again, you don't have to repay. Sorry, I just noticed another note in the chat. Do you need to have a seat offered? Aha, you don't need to have a seat to apply for full-time student loans. You don't need to be enrolled at all. However, they will ask us at some point to confirm your enrollment. If we see that you're not yet enrolled, we let it sit, figuring, well, they just haven't had time to do it yet. But as we get closer to that start date, if we still don't see enrollment, we'll probably reach out going, are you coming, or did you change your mind? And we'll help you figure that out as it goes. But yeah, absolutely. If you're thinking you're going to be coming in the fall and you just haven't dotted all your I's or crossed all your T's, put in your application early. You can always cancel. And we will never confirm your loan unless we see that enrollment, which means no funds will be released to you. So there would be no penalty or no issue with you applying. Money you don't repay. So in addition to the grant funding that you don't repay, there are other things that you can always look at. And this isn't just with Camosun. Most of the things I'm speaking to you aren't necessarily Camosun specific. These are for almost any schooling that you're looking at. Most of them will have a financial aid and awards area. Make sure that you have a look at it. I can't tell you how many times I manage most of the awards and bursaries, And there are so many times when I cannot give away funding to students. It hurts, it's thousands and thousands of dollars, and just people don't apply. Whether they don't know, whether they don't believe in themselves, they think that the process is harder than it is, all kinds of reasons. Really, when it comes to applying, I am looking for people who have some passion in what they want to do. I'm not looking for you to have the most eloquent letter or the best grammar. I'm looking for that place of passion. That's really what drives our funds. So for when you're starting in the fall, there are entrance awards and bursaries. I am actually feverishly working right now to get them to go live next week, and they'll stay up on the website for about 3 months. So apply for as many as you think you're eligible for. Let us be the ones to say, oh, no, that's not quite the right fit. Apply, because you never know what you may or may not get. And none of those funds need to be refunded. Same with the both awards and bursaries. There are specific awards that are for the departments. So School of Health or School of Business, they run their own awards. And we do have a link on our page, but they are department specific. And they often will have 100 or more specific awards that and industry partners have reached out to and want to help their students. So make sure that you go through and you are applying for everything that you're going to be eligible to apply for. Our foundation bursaries are offered twice a year, so every fall, every winter. These, again, I don't understand why not every student in the entire school applies. It's an online application, takes you about 10 minutes. It's click, 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 almost no writing of any sort. And most of them are $500 to $1,500. There are some that are program specific, but there are over 300 bursaries. So we don't make the students go through and figure out which one they're applicable for. We do that. We have the one easy bursary application. You fill out your information. We do the hard matching behind the scenes. And then we give you money that doesn't have to be repaid. So it's the good stuff. Sorry, there's another chat. What dollar amounts are usual for entrance awards? $1,000 tends to be a typical one. There are a few that take care of your entire program cost. I think office admin is one of those that you can get everything covered. There's some that are $5,000, but yeah, I'd say $1,000, $1,500 is pretty typical. It doesn't mean that you can't get more than one though, too. So yeah, this is the foundation bursaries. As I said, they're on our website. They're posted fall and winter. And if you ever need help figuring out where they are or applying, we're here to help. Other kinds of funding that we have the adult upgrading grant. This is connected with student ABC. This is high school level, so this is not post-secondary. This is for students who need to upgrade English, math, biology, chemistry, those kinds of courses. So it will cover the student fees and books if you're approved. There is no cost for the course itself, so this would cover all of your fees. The tuition waiver program will cover all tuition costs for former youth in care. So if that's how you identify and know that that's that you fit that criteria, there's an application form you can start with us, and we can get you going on that program. There are also subsidiary programs when you qualify for tuition waiver that we can help you with as well. The Esqualawan is our Indigenous First Nations department, and they sometimes have funding that we don't even hear about, and they especially can help with band funding. So again, if that's how you identify, check in obviously with us, but also check in with that department because they can direct you to some funding that may sometimes is a little more hidden or has some extra hoops to jump through, and they can help you figure out and navigate through all of that. That's most of my main information. So here's our phone number, our email address, our page, our hours. Thank you so much for having me. But again, the main thing I want to reiterate is please come and ask us questions. That's what we're here for. We're here to help guide you to all of these options. And I wish that students would do more reaching out to us, because that's, I mean, to help you is why we're here. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer anything that I haven't already touched on.
So Catherine, it's Janet. I just wanted to thank you for that information. I personally did not know all of this, and I know that our employment advisors and our staff here certainly will benefit from the information that you've imparted. We know that an investment in education is an investment in your future, and that's the goal of this workshop this afternoon, but you've really brought it to light how much is available out there. And I'm assuming that if you are a student potentially to go to Royal Roads, Mount Royal, all those kind of places, I'm sorry, that's Calgary, but Royal Roads is what I meant to say, that the studentaid.bc.ca is still the website for any potential student to go to look and see what's available.
Yes, and all of those places, UVic, Royal Roads, any of the big schools will have their own financial aid pages. So yes, I work for Camosun, and come to us, but there are lots of other great schools too. And if you are going somewhere else, just make sure you're, I want to make sure that people touch on those financial aid pages, seek out the information, seek out somebody who works in that department and say, hey, I'm coming in, here's my program, direct me to how I can financially help myself.
Right. And so you've really brought home the point about a person needs to take away the fear of exploring the options of loans, grants, and bursaries, because even if there's free money out there, why wouldn't someone want to take advantage of that? And then with the interest being put aside, which I think is probably a reflection of the labor market moving forward, right? As Tony mentioned, how many positions now are out there that require some sort of post-secondary, that there might be a greater need going forward for student loans.
Well, and we see students who are really savvy, who will take out the loans, they keep the grant funding that they don't have to repay, and they immediately, as soon as they get those funds in their account, they pay off their loan.
Yeah.
So now they owe nothing, and they have the free funding, or they put it in an account and they have it earn interest, and then they pay it off before it's due. So we certainly have seen students do those kinds of things. It's just that students don't seem to realize that those are options.
Right.
So, yeah, reach out to us and we'll help guide you.
Well, thanks so much. We really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon. Thank
Love
you.
coming. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. To finish off this afternoon, and sort of to piggyback on what Catherine's just imparted on us, we're going to ask Jane, one of our employment advisors, to speak to us about her personal experiences with herself and her children about the benefits of post-secondary education and the cost-benefit analysis of paying to get student loans with regard to your education. So Jane, why don't you take it away for us?
Yes, thank you. Yes. And Catherine, that was a good way to segue. Yes, is removing the fear, right? And then being committed to your goal, because I will hear from clients that the student loan didn't benefit them, but then they didn't follow through with their goal. And then some didn't research. What is the outcome? Am I going to get a return in investment with what I'm selecting? Yes. So I personally have done the 4-year degree student loan in the 80s. So I'm dating myself a bit. 1980s, it was paper student loan at that time. Has it been a benefit to me overall? And yes, I did have to pay for it while I was even married and had my first child. But when I look at the overall outcome, yes, it's not just the income per start, but it's the resiliency. You're able to ride the roller coaster of layoffs and reorganizations or your choice to change career. And it may not be like, for instance, my first work was with the province. Then I actually worked at Camosun College. So I went from government to education. Now I'm in nonprofit. That same credential carried me through all these different sectors. And then my children. So I have 3 young adults. I guess they're all millennials at 32, 30, and 27. So my eldest decided a little different from me. So he took an associate arts in English. He was always good, exemplary writer. And then he decided to tack on, so how we did it, because we always believed in education, just doing something that connects to your values, your passion, but also that practical sense, or is there a job at the end, right? So after he did his associate arts in English, he decided, okay, well, how do I get a more vocational applied type of training? And he went for, of all things, fashion marketing at Kwantlen College. His associate arts was from Camosun College. So what Chris has been able to do since is he worked somewhere with it was a shoe international shoe retailer. They got impacted, lost his job, and he was able to bounce back. And I helped him out a bit of what are your interests. You've done fashion marketing, and he also rides motorcycles. And I said, motorcycles have apparel, they have all these gear, and just by sheer luck even during the COVID pandemic, motorcycles where everybody wanted to get out when they could, so their wives and their kids or whoever could. So it actually really worked out for him. He's had 2 increases, and his pay increase, last one was 18%. So he actually earns very well now because the base pay was good, and they're also commission based on the apparel, right? And he was great. His metrics were good, so he presented that he wanted the raise. My middle son, let's see, he did business administration. They did a little bit different for me, whereas mine was 4 years, 2 years at a college, 2 years at university at Simon Fraser. My second son went, so with him, he went business administration, focus on marketing at Camosun College again. And then he traveled a bit. He worked while traveling, did the backpacker kind of thing. And then he said, okay, time to go back to the grind. And he decided on videography. So he went to BCIT and did the television and video production program, and he is working for Czech News now. So, and he started out in all operations, when you see Ed Bain and Joe and all these newscasters. So he used to be every aspect there. And he did a tour for me, and it was kind of amazing. High stimulus office, but he loved this job. After that, he competed for a creative producer, to be a creative producer. So helping some of the commercials you see behind in our Czech News and Czech TV is now him. So it taps into his more creative side as well. So that's
So
the
Jane,
middle. Yes.
So, excuse me, so did he take advantage of student loans and grants to educate?
Yes, good point. Yes, all of my children went student loans. We were able to put aside a little bit of what's called a registered education savings plan, but that didn't cover much, probably I would say the first year, right? And so all of them did. And then actually my daughter did, the female one wanted to go in the non-traditional trade, and she is a mechanic. She took automotive mechanic, Camosun College again. Yes. Now, so her funding, what she did is she went through Women in Trades training. So all the direct costs of schooling, including the tools. I remember they were given a budget for their tools of the trade. So her student loan was only for living support. So her rent, that kind of thing, right? And I do recall my middle son was able to, because he told me, he says, Mom, I got $2,000 in grants for year 1 and $2,000 for the next year. So there are these very decent grants out there that yes. So Marissa is my youngest, is also working now locally here, and she completed her year 1 apprentice after doing the foundation automotive. Yeah.
And so as a result of their education, they now have to pay back their student loans, and anecdotally, without getting too personal, do they find that manageable with the salaries that they're making?
Good question, Janet. What all my children did, and I'm proud of them for this, is they all worked while on full-time schooling, and they did 1 shift, right? I know I've heard of some students where they work like crazy during the summer times and then they don't work while in school. Mine, including me, I kept working. I was a shoe sales clerk at the Hudson's Bay in the 80s in Vancouver while on student loan. So yes, and so as far as having paid it, Marcus did very similar. So when some grants came in, this was the kid who was very compulsive with some purchases when he was little, but he was the one who's paid off his student loan the quickest. Right, so his is done, and then for the eldest and youngest, they're working on it. But like you've mentioned, Catherine, the interest is gone for the provincial, and their tabs are going down. But in the net of it, they are benefiting from having invested in their schooling. Yes.
Thank you so much, Jane. It's really great to hear testimonials from, in real life situations to bring home the point that it really is an investment in your future. So we appreciate you taking the time to share your personal story with us. That is the end of our information session this afternoon, everyone. I wanted to know if there are any questions before we conclude this afternoon. There's a thank you, which we appreciate. We are happy to be able to give the information. And I'm just going to put up a slide here for you to see that there is a contact information here for you. You have the contact information for Catherine at Camosun College, and that will be in the YouTube video as well. This is my contact information here. If you need any information from anyone else that has spoken at our session this afternoon, I can certainly forward the email on to them. So if there are no questions, I want to thank everyone for their time. I apologize again for the confusion with the Zoom meeting address. And again, we are WorkLink Employment Society. We offer employment services, and we're happy to help you if you need any further support. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Hi.